Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Is this on?
Okay, I'll take her to the place and
A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Please take your seats. Our session is about to begin.
we will. No problem, Manuela.
A very good morning, everyone. Please, we're requesting that you take your seats so we can begin our session on time. We'll do all the socializing and networking and picture taking after our session. So please take your seats so we can start. Thank you very much for joining us and for taking your seats. Well, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning and welcome to this special event on building Africa's food sovereignty and resilience through sustainable investments, organized by the UN Office of the Special Advisor on Africa on the sidelines of the 2023 UN Food Systems Summit. My name is Foliba Thibault from Al Jazeera English Television, and it's my honor and pleasure to be your moderator for this special event. Our heartfelt thanks to all those who've made this gathering possible, in particular to the Office of the Special Advisor on Africa, headed by USG Ms. Christina Duarte. Thank you all very much for being with us. A gentle reminder to please switch off your mobile phones if you haven't done so already. Now, the primary focus of this special meeting is to address the crucial issue of improving investment finance in agriculture to support Africa's food sovereignty and resilience. As current world events have shown, this is a matter of utmost urgency and importance for our continent, which faces unique challenges in ensuring food security for its people. So what specific measures can be taken to improve the investment climate in Africa's agricultural sector and promote competitiveness? In what ways can regional integration and collaboration contribute to the transformation of Africa's agri-food systems? And what initiatives can be implemented to provide smallholder farmers with the necessary resources, knowledge, and skills to be active participants in the transformation of Africa's agri-food systems? These are some of the questions that we'll examine and seek to answer in the next hour. We have a diverse and distinguished lineup of speakers from governmental entities, international organizations, civil society, the private sector, who will share their expertise and invaluable perspectives of Africa's food systems and investment needs. But first, it's my honor to invite the United Nations Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, who's also the chair of this special event, to deliver her opening remarks.
I've been sitting in for hours on a plane, so let me stand for all of you. Excellencies, our ministers from Somalia, from Ethiopia, Rwanda, it's such a pleasure to see you here with us. But a special greeting to my sister, Her Excellency Josepha Sako, our AU Commissioner for Agri, and to my two colleagues here, both Dong Yu, FAO DG, and Cindy McCain, also Executive Director from WFP. And I see in the audience, I must greet my other colleagues who keep me on my toes, USG Cristina Duarte, who has been really crucial to bringing us the ambition of this meeting that we have today, and Natalia Kanem of UNFPA. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and many friends in the audience, a real pleasure to be with you this morning and discussing sustainable investments that will build food security and sovereignty for Africa. Our focus is clear. We want to talk about finance. We want to talk about food. We need so much more in terms of our investments to build the food systems that will enable Africa to feed its own people, but also on its own terms. So this is an important agenda. Food sovereignty in Africa will be key to building resilience on the continent. And achieving food sovereignty would accelerate the progress across the Sustainable Development Goals, which would lift millions out of poverty, creating decent work, lifting outcomes in health and education, and raising the standards of living, giving us back our dignity. Food sovereignty would be transformative. The ambitious agenda that has been set by the African Union at the 2021 Food Systems Summit calls for just and sustainable agri-food systems across the continent that are centered at local communities, small-scale producers, especially our women and young people. But we're not yet delivering this ambition. We're stuck, and the major blockage has been the means of implementation, finance in the core. Small and mid-sized agricultural enterprises are the vast majority of agricultural businesses in sub-Saharan Africa. 3 out of 4 of them lack sufficient access to finance. And the majority of these enterprises are just unbanked. Our estimates suggest that we need about $76 billion every year until 2030 to power agri-food businesses and upscale technological infrastructure that will transform our food systems and build that sovereignty that we're looking for. Mobilizing these funds will take an overhaul of our global financial systems. The current systems fail to address the great finance divide between developed and developing countries and provide access to long-term financing at scale for SDG investments. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to propose 3 reflections that I believe are mutually reinforcing solutions. First, we need to strengthen domestic resource mobilization. This is the foundation for sustainable finance. We need to generate more money on the continent, and we need to use our money better. This means creating more efficient and effective tax systems. It means getting better at how and where we spend our public money. It also means more efficient and effective government expenditure, lifting our own game, the potential to mobilize financial flows that are already being generated on the continent is enormous, and yet this potential lies largely untapped. If we tap this potential, we unlock significant flows of finance to invest in our food systems. Second, we have to improve our investment climate. We need stronger governance institutions and more effective regulatory systems. We need harmonized food standards that allow trade under the African Continental Free Trade Area. Supported by domestic resource mobilization, an improved investment climate will reduce risk and risk perceptions. With lower risk comes lower cost of capital. This will change the business case for investing in African agriculture and allow Africans to better tap into international capital markets. But we must also urge credit rating agencies to review the criteria and parameters they are using for rating risk in Africa today. The final measure is that we have to take is a collective one at the global level. We have to fix the failing financial architecture. The Secretary General has been clear about this. Our global financial system is currently dysfunctional and no longer fit for the purpose that we require to achieve the SDGs by 2030. These are promises and commitments that we have made to billions of people. We need fundamental structural reforms to global financial institutions. We need to increase the voice and the participation of all countries, especially African ones. We need a global financial system that where African countries have the fiscal space to advance towards food sovereignty. There are viable solutions on the table, including the SDG stimulus, the Bridgetown Agenda. They all call for addressing the high cost of debt, scaling up affordable and long-term financing through our multilateral development banks, and making our international financial institutions much more inclusive, representative, and effective. We need Africa to champion these solutions, and I look forward to your contributions in the upcoming SDG Summit and at the Bretton Woods meetings in Marrakesh in October this year. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, food sovereignty in Africa holds immense potential. It would accelerate the SDG progress and launch momentum towards the Africa we want under Agenda 2063. So we must find that finance, the means of implementation, not to give, but to invest for an enormous return, not just for Africa, but for the world as a whole. I look forward to a productive exchange and hope to see specific steps, concrete steps, and sustainable measures to mobilize finance for sustainable investments that power Africa's food sovereignty. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, DSG, for your remarks, which have undoubtedly set the stage for meaningful discussions during this session. And thank you also for your steadfast support of the Sustainable Development Goals and for being a tireless champion of Africa's development. Thank you very much. Now, at this time, we have the privilege to have keynote addresses from government leaders who are actively working to overcome the food security challenges their countries face. We're honored to have with us His Excellency Ahmed Matobe Nuno, Minister of Agriculture of the Federal Republic of Somalia. The floor is yours. You may address us from your seat.
Thank you very much, and distinguished panelists, excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be part of this very distinguished panelist and participant to address this very important topic today. Africa, as you know, stands today with a common position that an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the global arena. In our pursuit of the African Union Agenda 2063, the continent is advocating for an opportunity to build a food system that is inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. As Africans, we are committed to adopting our national food system pathways, but to operationalize them fully, multiple challenges must be addressed. Importantly, lack of the necessary catalytical funds to coordinate these efforts and unlock long-term financial investments. A case in point is my country, Somalia. The country has an abundance of diversified natural resources, just like many other African countries, which offer huge potential for delivering rapid economic growth with important impacts on people's lives and livelihoods. These resources, for example, we have 8.9 million hectares of arable land, of which 25% of crop production are grown through irrigation systems. More than 50 million livestock, and about 1.8 million tons of fish annually for export. It has two major rivers, the Juba and the Shabelle rivers with a total length of 2,300 kilometers, and we pride ourselves as having the longest coastline in mainland Africa, which stretches 3,300 kilometers. These natural resources present numerous opportunities for growth across all sectors, and especially in the agricultural sector, if sufficient investment are directed to stimulate these sectors. For example, beginning this year, Somalia was among countries that met in Dakar, where we presented the Somali Country Food and Agriculture Delivery Compact, which clearly outlines priorities for investment to transform the fortunes of the agri-food systems and allow our country to attain projected GDP growth of 3.6% in 2023 and close to 4% in 2024 as a roadmap to attainment of food sovereignty and SDGs. The finance and implementation of this compact aims to attract private and public sector investment worth $563 million to increase yields across 3 sectors and to increase also local food availability and access. However, up to date, it remains a vision and a compact. There was no commitment received up to date. Despite these opportunities to redirect flow of finances to transformative food systems pathways and substantially reduce the population dependent on humanitarian assistance, the reality of our continent is that we are not yet had. Our food systems are challenged due to the very unfavorable terms of trade most African countries have. For example, in my country, we rely on imports to meet more than 85% of our food and cereal needs. If only we invest and we have the right investment, Somalia, which annually imports 1.5 billion of food, there will be opportunity for import substitution and redirecting these resources to key drivers of economic growth. Let us today send a loud and clear message of commitment to mobilize resources and especially long-term finance to help us diversify our sources of food by building internal food stocks and diversify their domestic production to ensure people's access to healthy diets and to look further for alternative suppliers. To building our food sovereignty and resilience requires the growth of productive sectors, which in turn requires that governments put in place business and enabling policies and environment to foster private sector and market-led investment in food systems. This is a call to attract the private sector's investment in the agricultural sector to increase investment in promising food value chains in each country for increased production for local consumption, as well as improved local dietary diversity and export, emphasizing issues of doubling crop and livestock production. This can be attained, in my view, through strengthening producer-public-private partnerships for blending financing of productive sectors infrastructure, agro-processing, and value chain value addition structures. The agro-processing industry is constrained by the shortage of skilled laborers, the high cost of energy, lack of infrastructure, lack of formal credit facilities, and limited capacity for innovation and investment. In my country, Somalia, we have already made key investment in infrastructure and financial incentives to support and attract foreign direct investment and to encourage the diaspora investment, which includes zero retail duty on all farm inputs, including pesticides, seeds, and construction of major ports that offer easy seaborne import and export with potential for infrastructure expansion as transport volume increases. Somali authorities will also develop the legal and policy framework to establish a competent authority for fisheries to certify, lead, and develop the access of Somali products to lucrative international markets. With climate change, it is critical that we attract climate finance for transformative investment that focus on harnessing water management through irrigation infrastructure, flood prevention, adoption of climate-smart inputs and technologies to diversify livelihoods, increase local production and productivity using scarce natural resources in the most efficient manner. Most of African countries face the same challenges, and it's critical that we globally raise our collective voices to influence a shift from the massive humanitarian response to financing development and resilience building, addressing underlying root causes of food insecurity. Opportunities for African countries to strengthen our common agenda for 2063 and to leverage on our comparative advantages are offered by the existence of our regional trade and economic bodies. Regional communities play a pivotal role in facilitating collaboration and coordination among countries within a specific region and to recognize our shared challenges and opportunities faced by neighboring countries and seek to foster cooperation for more sustainable and efficient food systems. Primarily, these initiatives focus on reducing the resilience of imported foods or agricultural inputs within the framework of Comprehensive Agricultural Development Program, the CAD program, Malabo framework, and the African Continental Free Trade Area. Particularly interesting for Somalia are the regional level initiative in relation to harmonizing food safety standards and promoting trade unions. Our government has developed the necessary policies to do the same. Therefore, the resources being mobilized for the compact will be catalytic to set the basis for bouncing off the productive sectors and transform our food systems. By promoting sustainable investment, Africa can transform its agricultural landscape and ensure food security for its growing population. Some key strategies that we are considering include enhancing agricultural infrastructure, empowering, supporting smallholder farmers, promoting climate-smart agriculture, strengthening research and development, encouraging value addition and agro-processing, fostering public-private partnership, and improving market access. Finally, and in conclusion, very important is the role women and youth play in this. For example, in many countries in Africa, including mine, more than 70% of the population are below the age of 30 years old, and women make 50% or more than the population, and we cannot speak about production and productivity without including this in the system. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks to the Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation of the Federal Republic of Somalia for his remarks. Thank you. We appreciate your insights. I would like to respectfully request to all the speakers to please respect the allocated time that you were given so we can get through as many issues and thematics as possible during this session. We appreciate it. At this time, we're going to hear from the Minister of Planning and Development of Ethiopia, Her Excellency Dr. Fitsum Assefa.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Your Excellency Amina Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Excellencies, Heads of States and Governments, all protocols observed, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to express my appreciation to the United Nations Inter Departmental Task Force on African Affairs for inviting my Prime Minister, His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed, to address this important gathering. But due to overlapping engagements for my Prime Minister, allow me to share Ethiopia's perspective on this vital topic for Africa. The theme of this special meeting is a timely and critical agenda that demands the urgent attention of the international community. We are meeting at a time when the world is off track to meet the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. After promising to eradicate poverty and achieve zero hunger by 2030, it's deeply worrisome that the number of people going hungry has continued to grow. The world is experiencing its worst food crisis in decades, aggravated by financial and energy crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic, global geopolitical competition, the war in Ukraine, and climate change have further exacerbated the food crisis, particularly in Africa. These interlinked and complex challenges have brought about profound impacts of market disruptions on agricultural inputs and food supplies. What is more concerning is that Africa hosts the highest number of people facing hunger. Millions of people still depend on food aid, while millions more cannot afford a healthy and nutritious diet. This is particularly very distressing in Africa, where small-scale farmers are the backbone of agriculture. Despite their importance in combating hunger, small-scale food producers are often among the most vulnerable groups in rural areas and within the agro-food system. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, endowed with 60% of the world's available arable land, we simply cannot envision peace, prosperity, and integration in Africa without first transforming Africa's agriculture. That's why we underscored that our collective promise of achieving zero hunger by 2030 would depend on transforming the existing African food systems. Creating a transformed, resilient, and healthy food system is indispensable to achieving both Agenda 2030 and Agenda 2063. Therefore, we have agreed in the African Common Position on Food Systems, as we have agreed in the African Common Position on Food Systems, it is high time to reform and invest in Africa's agro-industrialization models by harnessing the power of science, technology, and innovation. Adequate and sustainable investment in the agriculture sector is not a choice, but a necessity to modernize African agriculture and achieve food sovereignty. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to overcome its food security challenge, Africa has put in place key institutional and policy frameworks aimed at transforming its agri-food system. In this regard, the Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program and the Malabo Declaration on Accelerated Agricultural Growth and Transformation for Shared Prosperity and Improved Livelihoods have reaffirmed the political commitment of African governments. The Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program, an integral part of Agenda 2063, demonstrates the commitment of African governments to allocate 10% of public resources to the agriculture sector. With this program, African countries aim to reduce poverty and malnutrition, increase productivity and farm income, as well as improve the sustainability of agricultural production and use of natural resources. However, considering the meager resources available, as well as the current challenging global financial landscape, meeting the 10% commitment requires concerted national and global efforts to enhance investment in the agriculture sector. According to the UN report, $76 billion in annual investment is required to respond to the ongoing pressure on the agriculture sector. This amount of investment is indeed extremely difficult to cover from domestic resources alone. Therefore, as a champion of the Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program, Ethiopia would like to stress the urgent need to support Africa to complement continental endeavors. This requires renewed global partnership and solidarity. If we implement the right policies at all levels, African agriculture is projected to generate $1 trillion in agribusiness by 2030. This is indeed a huge opportunity, both for the public and private sector to work together to transform Africa's agriculture. In this regard, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement offers us a prospect of $2.5 trillion in agribusiness. And agribusiness can and should significantly contribute to this growth. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Ethiopia also shares similar challenges to other African countries in its continued effort to ensure food security. Despite internal and external challenges, Ethiopia has made commendable progress in transforming its agri-food system with enhanced investment and the introduction of new initiatives in the agriculture sector. Among our national initiatives in this regard, irrigated wheat farming, in which we doubled our annual wheat production from 5.9 million tons in 2018 to 12.2 million tons in 2022, is notable. We have also heavily invested in agricultural modernization with a particular focus on mechanization, digitization, innovation, and technology. I should also highlight that we have immensely expanded digital financial services for smallholder farmers. Through financial cooperatives and microfinance institutions, we have enhanced access to rural finances for millions of our citizens. To further scale up our success, enhanced financing for agriculture, not only by government and domestic investors, but also by international financiers, would be much appreciated. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, finally, let me seize this opportunity to thank the United Nations for its effort in supporting Africa to achieve its developmental goals. In this regard, I encourage the Rome-based UN agencies to continue their much-needed support to meet SDG 2, Zero Hunger by 2030, by mobilizing resources from all sources to transform Africa's agri-food system. We call on our international partners to stand with Africa to transform our food systems and support us achieve the vision of the 2030 Agenda and the Africa we want. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you. Dr. Fitsum Asefa, Minister of Planning and Development of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, and for stressing the opportunities that building a resilient agri-food system offers. Thank you very much. I'd like to remind you once again to please respect the allocated time. If you see me standing here, it means your time is up and that you need to wrap up. Thank you very much. We're now going to hear from His Excellency Mr. Ildefonse Musafiri, Minister of Agriculture and Animal Resources of the Republic of Rwanda. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellencies, dignitaries here present, all protocol observed. Good morning. First of all, I would like to inform you that I'm honored to attend this Food Systems Summit on behalf of my President of the Republic of Rwanda, Paul Kagame. Second, I would also like to express my gratitude to the organizers of this session for inviting me to speak in this special Africa event. I'm also honored to address this distinguished audience. As the Minister of Agriculture and Animal Resources, I would like to express my commitment to the cause of building Africa's food sovereignty and resilience through sustainable investment. I share with this audience the conviction that Africa, with its abundant resources, of course, as we know, can become a leader in achieving efficient agri-food systems and hence ensure global food security. To reach this desired destination and unleash the continent's potential on efficient food systems, we must be intentional in addressing the challenges that have hindered our progress so far. Fostering sustainable investment in the agriculture sector to secure Africa's food sovereignty for the future is one of the ways we can address the limiting challenges that our food systems face. By food sovereignty, ladies and gentlemen, I do not only make reference on food production to feed our people, but also I mean that each nation globally should have the ability to regulate its own food systems from farm to plate. Rwanda strives to have sustainable and inclusive food systems which is resilient to climate shocks. For this reason, significant investments have been made and we are committed to keep up this effort in a partnership with the private sectors. The major ones are investment in large-scale and small-scale irrigation technologies, where we have a target to increase a total irrigated land by 42% by 2024. We are also supporting farmers to access fertilizers and improved climate-resilient seeds through our crop intensification program. Almost 15% of the ministry's total annual budget is allocated to this program. We also try to de-risk agriculture sector through insurance systems. Through these schemes, National Agriculture Insurance Scheme, we have mitigated against the risks and the losses incurred by farmers due to unpredictable natural disasters, pest attacks, and diseases that affect livestock and crops. Of course, the adoption is still low, but the progress is certain. Recently, we have launched a big project financed by World Bank on commercialization and de-risking of agriculture transformation, which is targeting increased areas under irrigation. Agriculture commercialization, increased food availability, access to finance, and strengthen agriculture insurance for farmers in different value chain. So these 300 million project will develop over 15,000 hectares of land under irrigation and land husbandry. Ladies and gentlemen, in the recent review on our progress to strengthen food systems, we noted that agricultural productivity, climate shocks, and the post-harvest losses are still challenges to different actors in agri-food systems. Therefore, to hasten our march toward the food sovereignty, bold and diverse and inclusive investment will need to be made in the agriculture sector. These include providing farmers with access to relevant agricultural technologies adapted to our context, providing tailored training to farming communities, improving farmers' access to finance, and establishing customized extension services for knowledge transfer, among others. We also need to invest in agricultural transformation infrastructure to address the issue of food waste and the post-harvest losses. This empower local farmers, local communities, as well as agricultural exporters. As His Excellency I mentioned, mobilizing domestic resources will be important, but also we must work with development partners, civil societies, and the private sector on resources, funds, and technical expertise mobilization. This will accelerate our progress toward food sovereignty and resilience. As I conclude, I want to reiterate that building Africa's food sovereignty and resilience through sustainable investment is a shared responsibility. It requires the commitment and the concerted effort of government, farmers, and all stakeholders in agri-food system. If we are intentional in coordinating our effort and investing in our agri-food systems, we can truly unlock Africa's true potential, ensure food security for our people, become less vulnerable to all kinds of shocks, and create a prosperous future for our continent. Ladies and gentlemen, let's seize the moment and do things right. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Excellency, for shedding light on the policies and initiatives implemented by Rwanda in pursuit of food sovereignty and resilience. Now, we're running a bit behind time-wise, so I'm going to ask once again to please respect the allocated time. Some of you have important meetings to attend, and we will try to accommodate as much as we can. In our next session, thank you once again to all our government leaders there for their keynote speeches. The contribution, of course, is essential in our collective efforts to address the food security challenges on our continent. So in the next segment of this special event, we're going to hear more about the perspectives and plans for building Africa's food sovereignty and resilience through sustainable investment. And we're going to hear from representatives from various organizations and institutions dedicated to promote sustainable agricultural practices for food security and economic development in Africa. And a reminder that each of you has 3 minutes. I'm going to start with the Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, who has to leave us, unfortunately, in just a few minutes. So I'll allow you to go ahead first and give your remarks before moving on to the next speakers. Go ahead, please. You want to do it from here?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Three minutes? Maybe 1 minute.
Even better.
Better?
Even better if you
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so delighted to participate in those kind of promotion. We need to unleash the potential of Africa. Being understanding Africa about 40 years. What is the real potential for Africa? Natural resources, younger society, and there are so many biodiversity you didn't know. What is the value for the future? Because years, Africa people, international partners talk about challenges. I'm always optimistic about Africa. Why? You are about 10 years younger than the world average. You are a real younger society. Yeah? My sister is here. So that's 10 years. It's one generation. You can design longer because you have 10 years more younger than us, at least. And then how to turn the natural resource potential advantage to be the economic advantage. That's one step transformation. Second step transformation from the potential economic advantage to the social development comparable advantage. That's another step of transformation. So today, we focus about the investment. Of course, investment is very important. If we don't have a holistic design, long-term design, and every part ask money for your own purpose, not for your personal purpose, but for your own sector, subsector. Sometimes investment create a problem for you for the future. So I strongly encourage use the UN system-wide advantage, not only FAO, not only WFP or IFAD, and the UN Women, UN population. Yeah? Because look the next 30 years, if we didn't find out what is the real potential and what is the real priority of investment, that's something we have to figure out first. Second, we design bigger and longer, and then we need to do concrete. How to do concrete? From the FAO mandate, that's why I launched Digital Village, digital e-agriculture. That's the future. Because now we talk about by UN system classification. Seeds, LDCs, low income, middle income, high income. That's from last century classification. But I'm so delighted to see the bigger positive change in Africa. You are becoming a new world of the digital world. And maybe some development has become the older world, non-digital world. So last, I will strongly encourage the investor future. Future for innovation, future for young and young girl, young boy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Mr. Koo Dong-Yu, Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization, for his remarks. Thank you very much. We're now going to go back to our schedule and line up. And I'm going to invite Ms. Josefa Sacco, Commissioner for Agricultural, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment of the African Union Commission, to give her remarks. I'd like to apologize to you for coming to you a bit later than scheduled. Ms. Sacco, the floor is yours. You can do it from where you are, please.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Good afternoon. Let me acknowledge the presence of Her Excellency Amina Mohamed, the UN Deputy Secretary General, my dear sister, Excellency Ministers, distinguished panelists, Excellencies Ambassadors present, and Excellencies Ambassador, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol duly observed. At the African Union, I will first of all like to thank the organizer for the timely theme, that issue that we are discussing here in our conversation, because financing, it's really a core for us to achieve all the target, our target of Agenda 2063, as well as the SDG. So this is really very timely, because we are really passing a very critical moment on the continent. And as you know, that agriculture is the backbone of socio-economic development for the continent. 70% of our population are rural, so this is a very strategic, sector. In 2022, our head of states and government really assumed the priority of this important sector, and they came out with a flagship program, which is the CADEP Maputo. And in Maputo, the conversation that we are having here in terms of investing 10% of the national expenditure to agriculture, my sister, the minister, said it rightly, it's there. So in African Union, we don't need to invent the wheel. The wheel exists, and we are committed with all these policies of transformation of agriculture sector. So we started in Maputo in 2023. 10 years after, we see no progress. I would like to seize this opportunity, ministers present here, to take our destiny in our hand and stop being always crying for things, because Africa is very rich, Africa has resources, and Africa should organize themselves in terms of financing. It's not lack of financing. Let us see how can we address the 70% of our population that live in the rural settlement and they don't have access even to food. When we are talking about food, we know that the previous speakers, they said it rightly. We have all the potential. So what is lacking? Why are we not, why are we not the first in the class, like I can say when we're in school, we want to be first class degree? Why are we always in all reports behind? We should really change that narrative and look for the livelihood of our youth, our women, our farmers, because this is a sector for farmers. We are here. So in African Union, we have all the structure. We have the CADEP Malabo, Maputo. 10 years after, our head of state came again in Malabo. They saw that Maputo was not really making any effort, so they re-emphasized the Malabo Declaration. So even in the Malabo Declaration, we are just limiting ourselves to go and evaluate our member states. Are we evaluating them? What are we giving as investment for them to push their agenda of food transformation? Nothing. It's just data is important. But we have to pass to action. We have to pass to action. We have all this ecosystem to develop and move from that. We have all the institutions in African Union. We have all the agencies in African Union. Why are we not going forward? So this one, I have only 3 minutes. I cannot read my my dear sister Amina Mohamed, we should pass to action and stop all these institutional, because the institutions are there, and then let us really improve and go to the Africa we want in Agenda 2063.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sacco, for your remarks. Thank you. And thank you for highlighting the role of regional collaboration and cooperation. We're now going to hear from Mr. Alvaro Lario, President of the International Fund for Agricultural Development. If you can make it in 2 minutes, you get bonus points.
Thank you. I'll do 2 minutes and a half. So thank you all, Excellencies, Deputy Secretary General. We talk about the potential. It's clear there's a human capital, human dividend, arable land, natural resources. There's a concrete opportunity. There's 70 billion of imports every year in Africa, in food imports. Imagine if you transform that into jobs, in distribution, in storage, in commercialization. The opportunity is there. The challenges, we all know them, the distress, inflation, FX depreciation, climate challenges, droughts, floods, so I will not go into that. I wanted to focus on three aspects: finance, data, and political will. On finance, we know the tag price to transform food systems in Africa, 77 billion. Now it's a matter of how to mobilize it. From IFAD, for the next 5 years, we're committing 3 billion from our own financing, plus another 4.5 billion in Africa from our partners. And we invest more than 60% of our resources in Africa, so we are very much working on it. We're working, as an example, on the Public Development Bank of Niger on climate adaptation for small-scale farmers. Yesterday, we presented in Nigeria a program of more than 500 billion, Islamic Development Bank, African Development Bank, Green Climate Fund, special agri-zone projects. These are the projects we need. In Egypt, we are actually mobilizing more than 2.5 billion for the nexus of food, energy, and water. We need concrete actions, we need concrete programs. In terms of data, we just presented yesterday the financial data flows to food systems. We need to identify where are the gaps on financing, how is it, whether the money is actually well spent or not. That's very important to design policies. And finally, in terms of political will, it's clear that none of the stakeholders is living up to the ambition. We talked about already 2003 Maputo Declaration, 10% has never happened. So thank you for the Commissioner of bringing it up. ODA, we're seeing 11 billion per year on development of agriculture. That's not enough, clearly not enough. We see much more in humanitarian assistance. But if we want to prevent forced migration, if we want to prevent conflict, we need to invest now in job opportunities, local production, commercialization, transformation. We need those investments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Alvaro Lario, President of the International Fund for Agricultural Development. Thank you for telling us about some of the initiatives you've put forward there. We are going to move ahead now to Ms. Cindy McCain, Executive Director of WFP, the World Food Programme.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank, excuse me, Cristina Duarte for having me today and inviting me to be a part of this. It's a pleasure to be here for this important conversation organized by the Inter Departmental Task Force on Africa Affairs. We are all here because we recognize that strengthening African food systems so they are more local, sustainable, and efficient will have a dramatic impact on the continent's food security. The World Food Programme will always use its resources and expertise to support African countries in their efforts to achieve this transformation. First, we need to ensure that we use scarce resources efficiently so they are productive as possible and waste is minimized. This is why WFP supports farming communities to rehabilitate and conserve land and water, adopt climate-smart technology and practices, and reduce post-harvest losses. I have just returned to Rome from a mission to the Sahel. Since 2018, we have been running on an integrated resilience program in 5 countries in the region to support rural livelihoods and improve food security. We have worked with communities to rehabilitate over 220,000 hectares of degraded land so it can be used for agriculture, taught them irrigation techniques, help smallholder farmers sell their surplus produce, and run school meals programs so more children and young people can get an education. This shows the way forward, making sustainable investments to build resilience against food insecurity and tackle the root causes of hunger. WFP is also committed to using our firepower as a major purchaser of commodities to support local markets and economies across Africa. This includes facilitating the relationships between trading partners all along commercial value chains. In 2022, we invested $1.6 billion in local and regional food procurement, up from $1 billion in 2021. And I am pleased to say that a significant proportion of this money was spent on buying commodities from local producers in Africa. Finally, the private sector must play a critical role in providing the investment and innovation needed to develop markets and strengthen food production systems across the continent. For example, businesses can help African agriculture adapt to the realities of climate change with drought-resistant seeds and new production techniques and processes. The private sector can also help smallholder farmers produce food on a commercial basis. At WFP, we're part of a public-private consortium of 6 agricultural businesses and organizations. The Farm to Market Alliance has so far supported nearly 500,000 African farmers to increase their yields and to get their produce to commercial markets. Partnerships like this, backed by sustainable investments to support resilience and diversity in African agriculture, are critical for our long-term success. And WFP will play its full part. We are strongly committed to working with all of you here today to achieve our shared goal: food sovereignty and food security for every African nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cindy McCain, Executive Director of WFP. Thank you for WFP's support, and well done for keeping to the time. Thank you very much. Now, the DSG has to leave us, unfortunately, in just a few minutes, but we will hear from 2 more participants before you leave, if you can kindly stay. Thank you so much. We've heard, of course, from the different government representatives and international organizations here, and now we're going to talk about how do we bridge the multilateral and private sector. So we have first Dr. Ibrahim Hassan Mayaki, the African Union Special Envoy on Food Systems. You can speak from where you're seated, Dr. Mayaki, if you can.
Thank you very much. Let me recognize the presence of DSG and all the ministers who are here, and congratulate UNOSA and the Inter Departmental Task Force. I think I will let the technical issues, which has been flagged, because all of you here in the room do know them, the technical solutions, and I will focus on political solutions. Point number 1, there cannot be a transformation of food systems without a structural transformation. And for Africa, structural transformation goes equally with industrialization. As we are latecomers in development, our industrialization needs to be thought inward. And that's why we designed the Continental Free Trade Agreement. And the link will be established for an effective industrialization based on food systems transformation. The link will be established between the CADEP, the Malabos, the PIDA in infrastructure, and the Continental Free Trade Agreement. Point number 2, I keep repeating, if you put all the assets under management of African pension funds and African sovereign wealth funds, they are close to $1 trillion. And we invest in UK highways, Australian rails, and so on. So this has to change. It's close to $1 trillion. And this is a political issue. Evidently, pensioners need to get their pensions. But if we focus in sound project preparation, and that's what we are doing, and we'll get there, we can use these funds in a much more intelligent manner than we are doing right now. As a matter of fact, we are investing outside. We're investing in the US, we are investing in Europe, etc., with the monies of our pensioners. Point number 3. I think those who invest the most in our agri-food systems are the small-scale farmers. And they produce 80% of the food we eat. They invest more than governments. They invest more than all IFIs put together. So looking at small-scale farmers as potential entrepreneurs is the way to go. This is a fundamental political also solution. It's not technical, it's political. Technically, we know how it should be done. So President of IFAD was referring to the $70 billion of food imports. It comes out of our pockets. $70 billion of imports. How do we spend in agriculture? Less than 50. So just make the math. So politically, We need a transformative leadership, and it's getting there. And you can be sure that Africa in the next 20 years will start feeding the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. So there needs to be a structural transformation. Thank you very much, Dr. Hassan Mayaki, Ibrahim Hassan Mayaki, African Union Special Envoy on Food Systems. And now we'll hear from Dr. Agnes Kalibata, President of the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa.
Thank you, and thank you, DSG, for the opportunity. I just want to say three things. When we started the UN Food Systems Summit, I promised you that 5 billion people would be talking about food systems. I do believe we have delivered. We also said the Africa continent would be mobilized around food systems. Africa, under the leadership of Commissioner Sako, does have a common position. In that common position, we need to take advantage of the current momentum we are seeing here today. The momentum on the conversation on rethinking financing so that it can work for Africa. We cannot lose that. The conversation around rethinking how we produce must be anchored around trade corridors that work for Africa and food corridors that work for Africa. Can you imagine that of the 70 billion, 68% is spent on 4 commodities that Africa can produce, including maize and rice? We must do something about this. So the last point is, how do we build on this momentum and ensure that going into CAADP 2.0, Commissioner, can actually be the opportunity that the continent gets to feed itself, like you said, take our destiny into our own hands. So thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Agnes Kalibata, President of the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. And DSG, I know you have to go, so we'll excuse you. Are you sure? Well, this is not what your team is saying, so okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time then. We'll hear now from the CEO of the Pan-African Farmers Organizations. We've heard the importance of focusing on small-scale farmers. So let's hear from Dr. Babafemi, remarks by Dr. Babafemi Oyewole, who's the CEO of the Pan-African Farmers Organizations, to give us farmers' perspectives on this crucial issue.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the farmers. What is very important to us as farmers is to be in conversations like this, to be able to let the various stakeholders understand our situation. That, as we have been saying since yesterday, that only a third of the finance that is going to even the agricultural sector is reaching the farmers. That shows that farmers who are, in fact, when we're talking of food security, food systems, farmers are the center. Because without these farmers, there's no way we can produce. And we have just heard that these farmers produce over 80% of the food that is being consumed. So we need to really support the farmers. Not only with finance, but also with enabling environment that will make the finance to be available for them. And the financial institutions, they do not understand the value chain. And we need to make them to understand the value chain, because it is when they understand the value chain that they will be able to tailor their financial instruments to meet the needs of the value chain. And that is very important. And lastly, in PAFO, we are working with IFAD, AGRA, African Union, and other FAO to really build the capacity of these farmers, not only to understand the dynamics of agriculture in this modern time, but also to be able to contribute, sharing their experiences and also feeding back to the system what is happening on the farm, so that we will be able to do and assist them in the way it will add value to their operations. That is what we are looking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Babafemi Oyewole, CEO of the Pan-African Farmers Organization. And now we'll hear from Ms. Ndidi Nueneli, founder and executive chair of African Food Changemakers, who's trying to change the narrative, right?
Thank you so much. Higher Excellency, thanks for this wonderful opportunity. 3 main points. Number 1, we need to revamp funding flows to local organizations. Data shows that only about 10% of all the money we talk about actually goes to African local organizations. This is unacceptable. We need our multilateral organizations, our philanthropy organizations, and our local financing institutions to actually track how much money goes to local organizations and set clear targets to change this to 90% of the funding going to local organizations run by Africans for Africans. The second is around gender-based investing. We need to shift our lens, removing the bias from our investing mechanisms. From private equity to venture capital, we see significant bias around gender discrimination. So we need to hold ourselves accountable and ensure gender investing lenses, but also set clear quotas for financing women. For the programs I have started and run that have been successful, if you don't set clear quotas, you continue to ensure that women do not get financing. And I would suggest that we set 50% quotas for every financing windows we've established for female farmers all the way to female business entrepreneurs. Number three, we actively need to change mindsets about Africa. Changing the mindset of Africa from a hungry child to a successful female entrepreneur. I am convinced that Africa can nourish itself and the world. We need to start telling those positive stories and scaling the positive examples that are working on our continent. Together, I think we can ensure that this mindset shift trickles down. Because if you don't believe that Africans can change their future, then you continue to see us as victims as opposed to the agents of change in our own future. And we're doing this through African food change makers working in 37 African countries. So let's continue to partner across the continent to change these narratives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ndidi. Powerful, powerful words there. Well said. We need to change the mindsets and change the narrative. And now we're going to hear, last but not least, from Emanuela Del Rey, the EU Special Representative for the Sahel region.
Thank you very much. It's an honor, as usual, to be here to discuss about Africa. I very much appreciated all the interventions, and I want to say on the part of the European Union that we are perfectly in line, especially with Amina Mohammed, because she was talking in particular about this issue of the financial architecture. And I have to say, I'm very happy because nowadays in Africa, this is one of the main topics. And finally, I would say, because until now, unfortunately, let's say we gave for granted everything that was decided regarding how to proceed. And nowadays, instead, there is the need really to find effective systems that can provide the African countries the opportunity, especially in the framework of ownership that for the European Union is fundamental, provide their own thinking and their own way of proceeding. Of course, many things have been said. I agree about the continent being young, but what does it mean to be young today in Africa? I always say that it is not enough to possess a mobile phone to be part of the global debate. I think we have to do more for the African youth, because it is the youth that will take in its hands, in fact, not only the financial systems, but the production and all the rest, but also will be leading in terms of philosophy of other things that really need to be rearranged according to the new world that we are, let's say, witnessing in its development, and it is a fantastic experience of all of us that have already known the past world, and we are going to see the birth of this new idea behind the system that is developing. I want to say that, of course, my personal battle in the Sahel, for instance, is to fight for a private sector. Very difficult to attract the private sector. Narrative is killing most of the African countries because, of course, we know that there are problems, but there are also opportunities, and opportunities doesn't come very much to the scene, usually. Right. We talk more about the problems, and this is killing many African countries. So narrative is very important, private sector is very important, the youth is fundamental. I would also like to say one word about agriculture and in general the way people live, because we forget that we have lifestyles in Africa which must be preserved and, of course, reflect the identity of the countries. Agriculture, I was studying the situation regarding remittances, and I conclude. No?
Yeah. We're running out of time.
Yes, one concept and then I conclude. And it seems that 80% of the remittances sent to Africa by the diasporas are invested in agriculture for subsistence. So probably we have to put all this together and try to find solutions that are really sustainable for the future.
Thank you, Ms. Emanuela
very much.
Del Rey.
I think that all together we can make a difference.
Yeah.
Provided
Thank you
that we
very much.
continue
Together
to
we
keep
can
in
make a
mind
difference.
Ownership.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And so that's the end of our session. I'm really sorry to have rushed everyone towards the end of it, but we were trying to get as many voices in as possible, of course. DSG, a few words to close the session. Thank you all for participating. Don't forget to fill out the post-conference survey on your screens in front of you. DSG, your last
Thank
words,
you.
please.
Thank you very much. And my sincere gratitude to everyone that's stayed to listen and those that have contributed to the discussion, really inspired and re-energized. We always should make more time for a continent that matters. That's the stress and the confinement I felt just now. But having said that, hearing from Somalia, from Ethiopia, from Rwanda, what clearly came out there was that we have to do two things at the same time. Address the context in which we're dealing with this, whether it's conflict or it's climate or whatever it is that has been exacerbated by many externalities, and the potentials, investing in the potentials, because a lot of the potentials will address the root causes of the conflict and of climate adaptation together. So we have to find not one after the other. We need to do it all. And it often, I think it's frustrating to hear sometimes when we're saying we're not ready, we haven't done this yet and we haven't done the other, but you have to do all of it at the same time. And I think the trade-offs cannot be off the back of people. Women and youth have been heard all the way through this, and completely agree with Ndidi. We have to make sure that we're not leaving women behind. That's what we said for the SDGs and youth. The renewed global partnerships need to be better defined. What does it mean to partner with Africa? I think we need to question that and define that more clearly. What's a successful partnership with Africa? Innovation, the technology and what is out there today, I saw it in recent visits to Asia. There is no reason that technology cannot be procured and put into the hands of young people and women for Africa. When they talk about the drying up of Lake Chad, I have to tell you, there is a very high water table. So if fishing disappears, agriculture doesn't. And what we need is to find solutions to that and to do it at scale. The de-risking instruments that we're talking about for farmers, de-risking, full stop. The issue of how risk is perceived in Africa has to change. Some things just don't add up. It is the only continent where venture capital is going up. Everywhere else it's going down. So what does that say to us? And I think we have to look at the informal sector, which really powers Africa, and invest in that, not so much to formalize it in a place where they may be at a disadvantage, but the informal sector, the disposable income, the investments that could be taken in that direction fall far short of the potentials that we'd really like to see. And to the political messages that came from our big brother, Ibrahim Meyaki, we have the tools, and we need to use them. We need to invest in them. Everyone tells us that the AFCTA is bringing together the largest market. And so where are the investments? We need to say that what we've put on paper, and by the way, partners in this room have contributed to all of these instruments coming together. So if that's what we've done together globally, then surely that must be an effort that's worth investing in. I think that, long gone is Africa asking for anything. It's the investments. And when we look to see what we extract from Africa, that the world turns around on, I think some of those dividends need to come back, and they need to come back in investments for Africa. So taking the lead is the last thing I'm going to say. Dr. Sacco was very clear for us to be less process and much more action-oriented. And I think that building the momentum here into the next stage will change the narrative, because that's what's happening already. I think the geopolitical issues that we're facing today and tensions make it so that we all stand up and be counted. And I think that that's what this session has shown us today. Africa is standing up, it will be counted, and the global and international community will be there with you, accompanying you on that journey to potentials. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.